The galaxy was quiet, drifting in its endless silence, when the Zoroth Empire sent out another routine deep space scan. For centuries, they had scanned countless worlds, countless systems, and almost always the results were the same weak species. Fragile ships and primitive weapons. But when the scanner beam swept across the blue and green world called Earth, something unexpected stirred in the darkness of orbit. At first, the computers dismissed it as debris, a shadowed mass hidden among the planet's satellites. But then the readings changed, the data surged, and alarms began to flash on the alien consoles. The operators leaned forward, their eyes widening as the outlines sharpened. This was no broken station, no pile of metal scraps. It was a warship. The bridge of the Zoroth scanning vessel fell into silence. Every officer stared at the glowing screen as details appeared. Armor plating thicker than any dreadnought they had ever built. Weapon mounts covering its hull, many of them far beyond the power levels their technology could explain. Engines so massive that even idle, they bent the reading instruments. "This cannot be right," one of the analysts whispered, his voice shaking. "The data must be corrupted." Another muttered, but no one believed it. The ship was there, real and waiting. The commander of the scanning vessel ordered another sweep. The beams lanced out again, touching the hidden giant. Once more the readings came back impossible, terrifying. The ship's size alone was beyond belief, as if humanity had built a fortress meant not for travel, but for war itself. Rumors began to spark among the crew. Why would a planet like Earth, known for its strange and reckless people, possess such a monster of steel? Some said it must be an ancient relic, a forgotten weapon from wars long past. Others whispered that it had been kept alive for this very day. In the distant council chambers of the Zoroth homeworld, the reports arrived within hours. The counselors gathered, their voices overlapping in fear and denial. "This is deception," cried one. "Humans are primitive. They barely travel between their own planets." But another slammed a clawed hand against the table. "Look at the power readings. No primitive world could fake this." The hook deepened. If this was only one warship, how many more were there? Was it the only Guardian? Or simply the first that had been discovered? No one could answer. And that silence became heavier than any words. Back aboard the scanning ship, the commander stared at the endless stars outside the viewport. He had seen countless war machines in his career, but never anything like this. There was a weight in his chest, a realization that they had stumbled upon something meant to stay hidden. He gave the order, "Do not transmit further scans. Do not provoke it." But it was too late, for as if aware of being watched, the warship stirred. Its engines glowed faintly, a ripple of light across its hull. Not a full activation, just enough to let the galaxy know it was awake. The crew gasped. Some recoiled in fear. One young officer whispered, "It knows. It knows we are looking at it." The commander clenched his fists, his mind racing. If a single Terran warship could project such presence without even moving, then the balance of the galaxy was already broken. Whispers spread faster than light. Among traders, among mercenaries, among rulers of star systems, they all repeated the same question in dread. What else are the humans hiding? The warship remained still, a titan at rest, but its silence spoke louder than any weapon. Every alien who saw the reports understood the same truth. If humanity had built this once, they could build it again, and if they had kept it hidden for so long, then perhaps they had never stopped building. Fear crawled into the hearts of even the bravest warriors. The Zoroth Empire had wanted only to measure another weak world. Instead, they had awakened a nightmare, and deep in their minds, a single thought grew like a storm. If this was Earth's warship, then they were already destined for ruin. The Zoroth Council Chamber was a place built to show power. The walls shimmered with crystals, the ceiling painted with stars, and the floor itself pulsed with energy to remind all who entered that the Empire was eternal. But on this day, there was no sense of power, only fear. The reports from the scanning ship had arrived in full. Images of the Terran warship hovered in the air above the table, rotating slowly, casting shadows across the frightened faces of the counselors. No one spoke for a long time, each leader waiting for another to explain away the impossible. Finally, one counselor broke the silence. "This cannot be real. The humans are weak. They are fractured. They have no empire, no fleets," he shouted, his voice desperate. But another answered with trembling claws, pointing at the readings. "Look at the data. Look at the weapons. These are not primitive tools. This is technology meant to erase worlds." The chamber erupted into noise. Some argued it must be a trick, a false signal sent to scare them. Others claimed the humans must have found the wreckage of an ancient race and claimed it as their own. But no matter how they tried to deny it, the truth was clear. The warship was real, and it was active. The panic spread beyond the chamber. In the military halls, officers whispered that their fleets might not be enough. In the trade networks, merchants feared that humans, once seen as buyers of scraps, might soon become sellers of fear. Across the stars, even the smallest colonies began to feel the tremors of doubt. The commander of the Zorath fleets was summoned before the council. His armor gleamed, his posture straight, but his eyes betrayed unease. "What do you make of this vessel?" the High Speaker demanded. The commander hesitated, then answered with a low voice, "If the data is true, this ship alone could match 3 of our dreadnoughts, maybe more." The words sent a shiver through the chamber. 3 dreadnought symbols of Zorath's dominance, reduced in worth to nothing against a single Terran machine. It was unthinkable, yet undeniable. The council debated for hours, their voices rising, their threats empty. Some wanted to send spies to Earth, to confirm with their own eyes. Others wanted to silence the scanning crew, to erase all knowledge of the warship before panic consumed the Empire. But deep down, every one of them knew secrets could not be buried forever. The panic reached the people. Rumors spread faster than truth. Stories twisted as they traveled on mining stations. Workers whispered that Earth had a fleet hidden under the oceans. On trade hubs, captains swore they had seen other massive ships in the void. Fear painted every shadow darker, every silence heavier. The Zorath commander returned to his quarters. He looked out at the stars, but for the first time in his life, he felt small. For generations, his people had ruled through fire and steel, believing no rival could ever rise. Now, a single world, long mocked as weak, had shown a glimpse of power greater than empires. Among the soldiers, panic grew louder. Some prayed, others sharpened weapons, though they knew steel was useless against such titans. One young officer whispered to his friend, "If this is only one ship, what happens if they wake the others?" The words spread, turning into a chorus of dread. Back in the chamber, the High Speaker raised his voice above the chaos. "We must control this fear. If the galaxy believes humanity has such power, they will bow to them without a fight." But even as he spoke, his hands trembled, his voice cracked. He did not believe his own words. Reports arrived from neighboring empires. Other species had intercepted fragments of the scan. And they too had begun to whisper. All across the galaxy, rulers who once laughed at humanity now sat awake in the long nights, wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. The Zorath commander could not sleep. He returned again and again to the image of the Terran warship. Its silence was louder than thunder, its stillness more frightening than an entire fleet in motion. It had not fired, it had not moved, and yet it had already broken the will of thousands. The panic was not only in the Empire, it was in the galaxy itself. Every being who saw the scan felt the same chill. If the humans had kept this hidden for so long, what else were they hiding? The commander whispered to himself as the stars burned outside. "This is not just a ship, this is a warning." And far away, orbiting Earth in silence, the warship remained still, but in its silence, it promised only one truth. The galaxy was no longer safe. The Zorath Empire prided itself on strength, on fleets of steel and armies without fear. But strength often breeds arrogance, and arrogance is the seed of denial. In the council chamber, after days of panic and shouting, a new voice rose above. The rest, Admiral Kor, the most decorated war hero of the Empire, stood tall, his scales gleaming under the chamber's light. He raised a claw and growled, "Enough of this fear. You disgrace our empire with trembling." The chamber fell quiet. Every counselor knew Kor's name. His victory stretched across a dozen wars. If anyone could face the Terran threat with confidence, it was him. "These humans are weak," he declared, his voice like iron. "They live on a single world. They have no empire, no colonies, no real fleets." He pointed to the rotating image of the Terran warship above the table. "This is nothing but a relic, perhaps from an older war, perhaps scavenged, perhaps even fake." Some counselors nodded quickly, eager to believe. Yes, that makes sense," one agreed. "It could be a trick. The humans always play with illusions." "And bold talk," another leaned forward. "If they had such power, would they not already rule the stars?" Denial spread like fire in dry grass. The more they repeated the words, the more they began to believe them. To admit the truth was to admit weakness, and weakness was something the Zoroth Empire refused to accept. Admiral Kor's voice grew louder. "Our dreadnoughts outnumber anything humans could dream of. Our fleets control half the trade routes of the galaxy, and our armies march on 100 worlds. Are we to fear a single ship?" The chamber erupted in applause, desperate applause. It was not the sound of confidence. It was the sound of creatures clinging to hope, but not all were. Convinced, Counselor Vena, one of the few who had studied human history, shook her head. "You fools," she hissed. "Have you forgotten what they are called, Deathworlders? Their home is a planet that kills even its own children. Their species survived every terror their world threw at them. Do you think they built only one ship?" Her words cut like knives. But Admiral Kor slammed his fist against the table. "Stories," he barked. "Legends told by cowards. I have fought real wars. I have seen real enemies. I will not fear fairy tales." The chamber split. Half followed Kor, eager for denial, eager for courage to mask their fear. The other half stayed silent, their eyes filled with dread. But in politics, silence is weakness, and the loudest voice always wins. Admiral Kor pushed harder. "I will prove to you all. I will take a fleet to the human system myself. We will see this so-called warship, and we will show the galaxy that the Zoroth Empire bows to no one." The decision was sealed. Despite whispers of caution, despite warnings from analysts, the Council approved the mission. Denial had chained their reason, and pride had blinded their sight. Across the Empire, the news spread. "The humans have a relic," the broadcast declared. "But the Empire will crush their illusions." Soldiers cheered in the streets. Banners flew, and people sang of Admiral Kor's coming victory. But behind the smiles, fear still lingered. For even those who clapped the loudest wondered in the quiet of night. What if the ship was real? On the flagship Iron Fang, Admiral Kor inspected. His fleet, rows of dreadnoughts stretched across the void, their cannons gleaming, their engines humming like thunder. "This is true power," he said proudly. "Not shadows, not tricks." His officers saluted, their faces set with forced determination. But when the Admiral turned away, some exchanged uneasy glances. Far away, on hidden frequencies, spies of other empires whispered their reports. "The Zoroth are moving," they said, their pride blinds them, and in hushed voices they added, "The humans wait, and they do not speak." The denial of the Zoroth Empire had become their path forward. They would not accept fear, so they chose anger. They would not accept truth, so they chose arrogance. Counselor Vena watched the fleets depart from her private chambers. Her claws tapped against the glass, her voice a whisper no one heard. "You are flying into a storm you cannot imagine." In the human system, the warship still floated in silence. Its massive hull reflected the light of the sun, cold and unmoving. It did not fire. It did not move. It did not even acknowledge the Zoroth fleets approaching. But to those who looked closely, to those who dared to study the shadows, it seemed to be waiting. and as the first Zorith ships closed the distance, a message appeared on their scanners. A simple human phrase, one that sent chills into every heart that saw it. "Do not test us." The fleet of Admiral Kor moved through the void like a storm. Dozens of dreadnoughts, cruisers, and frigates stretched across the black sea of stars, each one burning with the pride of the Zorith Empire. Their engines glowed like suns, their cannons pointed forward, ready to erase whatever stood in their path. At the center of their journey, their target remained silent. The Terran warship, still hidden in Earth's orbit, drifted like a sleeping giant. Its shadow vast, its presence overwhelming. It had not fired, it had not moved. It had not even acknowledged the coming threat. But sometimes silence is louder than words, and stillness more dangerous than motion. On the bridge of the flagship, Iron Fang, Admiral Kor stood tall, his chest swelling with pride. "Behold," he shouted to his officers, "the great terror of humanity. Nothing but an ancient carcass of steel, a ghost of a forgotten war." His crew cheered. But their voices wavered, their eyes always flicking back to the massive image on their scanners. The warship was not dead, not broken. It was waiting then. Without warning, the silence changed. A low hum vibrated through the scanners, a ripple of energy spreading across the void. One by one, the alien consoles lit up with warnings, their readings spiking beyond limits. The Terran warship stirred. Engines the size of mountains flared to life, glowing with power no Zorith ship had ever seen. The massive hull shuddered, plates sliding into place, weapons aligning, systems awakening after centuries of slumber. It was not a relic, not a ghost, but a living machine, and it was waking. Up the bridge of the Iron Fang froze in stunned silence. Admiral Kor's smile faltered for the first time, his throat dry. What is this?" he whispered, though he already knew. The warship's heartbeat had returned, and the void trembled with it. The crew scrambled, alarms screaming across every ship. Weapons are online, energy levels rising, targeting systems active, shouted one officer, his voice breaking. "It sees us," whispered another, his claws shaking on the console. And then, as if to confirm their worst fear, the warship turned, slowly, almost lazily. The giant rotated in space, its hull glinting with the light of the sun. For the first time, its weapons faced the Zorith fleet directly. It did not fire, not yet, but the message was clear: "I see you." Panic rippled through the fleet. Some captains shouted to retreat. Others demanded to open fire. But no one could agree. No one could steady their trembling hands. They were warriors trained for war. But this was no battle. It was a nightmare come alive. Back in the council chamber on the Zorith homeworld, the live feed of the awakening reached the leaders' voices. Broke. Claws slammed against tables. Some wept openly as their readings displayed power outputs greater than entire fleets combined. "This cannot be," one cried. "No species could build this." But another whispered, "Then humanity is not a species. They are something else, on Earth." The warship's activation did not go unnoticed. Human command centers lit up. Messages spread across hidden networks. The old guardians stirred from their stations, their eyes cold but steady. For centuries, the Terran fleets had slept in silence, their presence hidden, their strength forgotten. Now one had awakened, and the galaxy was watching. Admiral Kor tried to steady himself. "Do not break," he ordered. Though his voice cracked, "This is just a show, just intimidation." But deep inside, his courage was cracking, his pride turning into dread. The warship's silence had been terrifying, but its awakening was unbearable. The Terran vessel spoke at last, a single message, carried on all channels, simple and calm: "Do not test." U.S. The words echoed through every ship, through every console, through the very bones of the crews. It was not a threat, it was a promise. The Zorith captains looked to their admiral for guidance. But Kor had no words for the first time. In his life, he felt smaller than the void. His denial had carried them here, his pride had blinded them, and now his fleet faced the truth. This was no relic, no illusion, no trick. This was humanity's power, and it had only just begun to awaken. Across the galaxy, other empires received the signals. Rulers who once laughed at Earth now sat in silence. Some ordered fleets to retreat from Terran borders. Others began secret talks of surrender before war even started. Because they all saw the same thing, the rise of a predator among prey. In the dark of his quarters, Counselor Vena stared at the feed, her voice a whisper carried only to herself. They tried to deny it, but now there is no more denial. Humanity has awakened, and the stars will never be the same. And in the cold silence of space, the Terran warship moved forward, not fast, not aggressive, just enough to remind all who watched that it was alive. Its engines burned like suns, its weapons gleamed like judgment, and every soul who saw it knew the same truth. The awakening had begun. The Terran warship had awakened, its weapons glowed faintly, its engines pulsed with power that bent the scanners, and its presence alone crushed the courage of fleets. But for Admiral Kor, pride was stronger than fear. He refused to return home defeated. He refused to admit the humans had already won. On the bridge of the Iron Fang, he slammed his clawed fist on the console. Enough of this waiting. We will strike first. Let the galaxy see that the Zorath Empire bows to no one. His officers hesitated, their eyes flicking nervously to the image of the Terran giant drifting in orbit. Admiral, one whispered, perhaps we should retreat, regroup, study their ship further. Kor snarled, his voice sharp as steel. Retreat is for the weak, and I am not weak. He gave the order. All ships, prepare to fire. Across the fleet, thousands of cannons rotated. Missile bays opened, engines roared as the dreadnoughts aligned for battle. The stars themselves seemed to dim as the Zorath armada aimed their fury at a single target, the Terran warship. And then, with a thunder of energy they fired. The void lit up with rivers of fire. Beams of plasma streaked across the darkness. Missiles screamed forward, and the combined power of 30 dreadnoughts surged toward the sleeping giant. The officers on the Iron Fang held their breath, waiting for the explosion that would prove their victory. But the explosion never came. The Terran warship moved, not fast, not desperate, but smooth and precise. Its engines flared with impossible energy, and the giant shifted just enough for the storm of fire to pass harmlessly into the void. The missiles detonated far behind it, blooming like useless fireworks in the darkness. Gasps filled the Zorath bridges. How can something that size move like that? One captain stammered. It dances, whispered another, awe and fear mixing in his voice. But the truth was worse than any of them dared to say. The Terran warship wasn't struggling, it was toying with them. Admiral Kor's face burned with rage. Fire again, he roared. Cannons blazed once more. Plasma bolts and missiles filled the black skies of space. And once more, the Terran warship moved, gliding like a predator through a storm, its massive frame weaving effortlessly between the blasts. Not a single strike touched its hull. On the third barrage, the Terran warship responded. Not with a storm, not with fury, but with a single shot from its forward cannon. A lance of white fire erupted. It cut across the void like the hand of a god, slicing through shields, through armor, through steel and bone alike, in one instant. 5 dreadnoughts vanished, their hulks torn apart, their crews turned to dust. The void was silent again, save for the echoes of dying ships. The surviving Zorath captains stared at their screens in horror. 5 dreadnoughts, erased by one shot. Not destroyed piece by piece, not crippled, but gone, as if they had never existed. This is impossible, whispered an officer, his voice trembling, but deep down, they all knew it was real. The Terran warship did not fire again. It didn't need to. Its single strike had spoken louder than any words, louder than any war. It was restraint, not war. A message carved in fire: leave, or the next shot will not stop at 5. Admiral Kor's body shook with rage. He wanted to order another strike. He wanted to prove his strength, But his voice failed him. Around him, his officers looked away. Their courage broken, some whispered prayers, others simply stared at the Terran warship with hollow eyes. Even Kor, the proudest of them all, felt the weight of truth pressing down on him. On the homeworld, the council watched in stunned silence. They had expected victory, songs of triumph, proof that humans were weak. Instead, they had seen their greatest weapons crumble like sand before a single Terran cannon. One counselor buried her face in her hands. Another whispered, "The galaxy will never forgive us for waking them." Whispers spread across the Empire. Soldiers spoke of the shot of judgment. Traders told stories of how one human warship destroyed fleets without effort. Across the stars, fear spread like fire. If one ship could do this, what would an entire fleet of them unleash? In his private chamber, Counselor Vena closed her eyes. Her words were heavy, filled with dread. This was not war. This was mercy. The Terran warship returned to silence, drifting once more as though nothing had happened. Its weapons cooled, its engines dimmed, but its presence still screamed across the galaxy. It had shown just enough to prove the truth, and now no one could deny it. The first strike was over, and the galaxy knew that if humanity truly chose war, there would be no survivors. The first strike was over. 5 dreadnoughts had vanished in one breath. Destroyed by a single shot from the Terran warship, the Zoroth fleet had retreated, broken and humiliated, their courage shattered. But the real damage was not in the ships destroyed. It was in the message that spread across the galaxy. The warship had not pursued. It had not unleashed its full fury. It had shown restraint, a warning written in fire. And in that restraint lay the most terrifying truth. Humanity had no need to prove its power. It already owned it. On the Zoroth homeworld, panic swept through the streets. Merchants closed their stalls. Soldiers muttered prayers. Citizens whispered in dark corners. Rumors twisted into nightmares. Some say the humans have 100 ships like that. One worker said, "No, 1,000, hidden under their oceans," another replied. And though no one knew the truth, everyone believed the fear. Other empires received the reports through spies and intercepted transmissions. The Vaith Syndicate, masters of trade and deception, canceled all routes near Earth. The Koth Dominion, proud warriors of the Outer Rim, pulled back their fleets from human borders without a word. Even the neutral merchant guilds who bowed to no empire now refused to sell weapons to anyone who might anger the humans. The galaxy was changing, and it was changing fast. In the grand halls of the Galactic Union, leaders gathered in secret meetings. The chamber was filled with nervous voices, claws tapping on metal, wings fluttering with unease. One spoke, "If the humans reveal more of these warships, our fleets will be meaningless." Another whispered, "Then we must appease them, give them tribute, keep them silent." But a third hissed, "No, if we bow now, we are slaves forever." The fear spread beyond leaders, beyond soldiers, beyond merchants. It seeped into every colony, every shipyard, every mining world. Children whispered about the sleeping giants. Priests declared that the humans had awoken as the hand of fate. Even criminals avoided Terran space, fearing to vanish like the dreadnoughts. Back on Earth, humanity remained silent. No grand speeches, no threats, no shows of glory. They let the galaxy's fear grow on its own. In hidden bases, more ships stirred. Old guardians checking systems, quiet crews preparing without fanfare. But to the galaxy, even silence was terrifying. On a frontier outpost of the Zoroth Empire, a soldier wrote in his journal, "We were told the humans were weak. Now I dream of their warship every night. It does not attack, it only watches. And that is worse than death." His words spread among soldiers, copied and shared in secret. Each line feeding the growing terror. Admiral Kor, once the loudest voice of denial, now sat alone in his quarters. He did not sleep, he did not eat. He only stared at the last transmission of the Terran strike. Again and again, he watched the white lance of fire erase his fleet. His pride was gone, replaced by a hollow silence, and though he would never admit it, he knew the truth. His name would be remembered not as a hero, but as the fool who tested Earth. In the high markets of the Vaith Syndicate, traders sold fragments of wreckage said to be from the destroyed dreadnoughts. They were nothing more than scrap, but buyers paid fortunes just to hold a piece touched by the human's wrath. Superstition grew. Some believed carrying such a fragment could ward off the Terran gaze. Others whispered it would mark them for death. The galaxy was no longer at peace, not because humanity had declared war, but because the galaxy now lived. In its shadow, every leader knew one truth. They had awakened something ancient, something patient, something unstoppable. Counselor Vena, who had warned them all, walked alone through the council chambers. Her voice echoed softly in the empty halls. They feared the silence. They denied the truth. They tested the warning. And now the stars themselves tremble. She knew that humanity had not yet begun to fight. They had only reminded the galaxy that they could. On distant colonies, young children looked at the night sky and asked, "Where are the humans tonight?" And their parents had no answer, because no one knew how many ships waited, how many giants slept, how many eyes watched from the dark. The Terran warship remained in orbit, a silent sentinel. It did not move, it did not fire, but its shadow reached across light years. Empires shifted their maps to avoid Terran space. Fleets turned away from routes near Earth, and everywhere the same thought grew louder. If one ship can do this, what will happen when the others awaken? The galaxy had lived for centuries under balance. Power spread across empires and alliances. Now, with a single strike, that balance had shattered. Fear had replaced arrogance, silence had replaced laughter, and in the silence, humanity waited. The galaxy was no longer the same. The first strike had ended, the fear had spread, and silence ruled every council chamber, yet deep in every heart. One question burned brighter than all others. Was there only one Terran warship? For weeks, empires whispered. Merchants traded rumors as if they were gold. Soldiers muttered stories in the dark. Priests declared visions of doom. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the next move, waiting to see if humanity would stay silent or reveal more. That answer came on a cold night above Earth. The stars shifted, the void trembled, and the oceans themselves seemed to stir. From deep below the waves, lights began to rise, massive shapes breaking through the water, sending storms crashing against the shores. One by one, shadows climbed into the skyships, colossal ships, hidden for centuries beneath the seas. In orbit, the first warship stirred again, its massive hull glowing as signals spread across the system. And then the truth was revealed. It was not alone. From the dark side of the moon, more shapes emerged, their armor black as night, their weapons glowing faintly from hidden bases across Mars. Titans of steel lifted into the sky, dust storms swirling in their wake. From the asteroid belt, hidden hangars opened, releasing guardians that had slept for generations. Across the galaxy, every listening station, every spy probe, every ship, with open ears caught the transmissions, and panic turned into despair, because humanity had not one warship, not 10, but fleets armadas, entire legions of giants. Silent, patient, waiting for the day they would be needed. In the Zoroth council chamber, the leaders fell into chaos. Voices screamed, claws clashed. Some demanded immediate surrender, others demanded hiding. But no plan seemed enough, no strategy mattered. The galaxy's most powerful empire now looked like a child standing before a storm. Admiral Kor, once proud and fearless, now sat hollow. He stared at the feet of Terran ships rising from the oceans, his hands shaking. This was never about one ship, he whispered, his voice thin. They let us see only what they wanted, and now they show us what they truly are. On frontier worlds, civilians wept. Some dropped to their knees in worship, believing humanity to be divine beings. Others fled their posts, abandoning colonies, fearing that the Terran fleets would descend upon them next. The galaxy's heart beat faster, every pulse filled with terror. But the humans did not move to invade. Their fleets rose, their engines burned. Their weapons glowed, but they remained in orbit. The only sound that reached the galaxy was a single transmission. A voice calm, steady, human. "We asked you not to test us." The words cut deeper than any blade. They carried no rage, no hatred. Only truth. Humanity had never been weak. They had never been defenseless. They had always been ready, always prepared, always watching. Counselor Vena, standing before her people, spoke the truth aloud. We feared, we denied, we mocked, and now we know. The humans are not rising. They were always risen. It was we who were blind. Across the stars, empires began to shift. The Vaith Syndicate offered trade treaties, their greed turning into obedience. The Koth Dominion, once proud warriors, sent envoys with gifts of surrender. Even the most arrogant rulers lowered their banners, knowing they could not stand against the Terran armadas. But among the people, fear mixed with awe. For some saw humanity not as conquerors, but as protectors. Stories spread of humans giving warnings, not destruction, of humans showing mercy, when they could have erased entire fleets. And in that mercy, a seed of hope grew. On Earth, the war councils remained silent. The leaders of humanity looked upon their fleets, their ancient guardians, and did not smile. They carried no joy in fear, no pride in dominance. Only the cold certainty that they had done what was needed. The galaxy would never forget this day, the day when humanity revealed its truth. And so the revelation echoed across the stars. Humans were not the weakest, not the prey, not the fragile species the galaxy believed. They were predators. They were builders of titans. They were survivors of a death world who had forged weapons to shake the heavens. And now, no one could deny it. The Terran warships remained in silence, guardians of Earth. They did not conquer. They did not demand. They only existed, and their existence alone ruled the galaxy. For every alien who looked to the stars at night, one thought would always return. If this is what they reveal, what else are they hiding? The stars burned on, endless and cold. But now the galaxy burned with a new truth. The balance of power had shattered forever, and at the center of it all, humanity stood revealed. Not as prey, not as weaklings, not as a forgotten race, but as the shadow that would never fade. The revelation was complete.